Douglas Murray, is there a problem actually in the Holy Book, in the faith, or is the problem in some of those, like this gentleman, and their interpretation of it?
Well, we're very lucky that most Muslims don't think anything like Anjem Choudary, or we'd really be in trouble. Most Muslims, both in Britain and across the world, are law-abiding, decent people for whom their faith is an important part of their lives. However, there is an awkward thing about Islam, which is that Islam's religion, its founder, was a more violent man than, for instance, the founder of Christianity. I'd give you an example. I mean, if Christ, I'm not a Christian, but I have no truck in this thing, but if Christ had been a warrior, had killed people he captured, Christianity's history would be even more violent than it has been. I'd give you one other example. When a woman is brought in adultery to Jesus, he says, he who's without sin casts the first stone. When Muhammad has a woman brought in adultery to him, he orders her to be stoned. This would be a very different outcome. Now, fortunately, as I say, there's no doubt about this, about the nature of Muhammad as a beginner of a religion. There's no doubt about that, but there is also no doubt about the fact, as I say, that most Muslims don't behave in that way. Because religion is open...
Sorry, Douglas, that's untrue. It's untrue. You've deliberately picked on one example, and that is Jesus Christ, the prophet of God. Before that, there were many other prophets that Christians also believe in, such as the prophets of the Old Testament, who launched wars, who were kings, King Solomon, King David. Hold on, Douglas, I'm making a point here, which is that prophets, during those times, some of them fought, some of them didn't fight, some of them it's disputed whether they fought. The point is that all religions are interpreted. We can't say here that Islam is one thing or another.
But Jesus' message was very clear. He never said to stone anyone to death, Jesus, did he?
I think it's disputed, even the fact that the Prophet Muhammad stoned people to death. That's not a fact. That's not a fact.
But yeah, you can admit it. Harris Rafiq.
Yeah, just a couple of points. First of all...
Did the Prophet order people to be stoned to death?
Right, okay. That case itself was where the woman insisted that she had punishment. There was one case where the woman was stoned, and that was when she came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and said, I have committed adultery. The Prophet, peace upon him, turned his face away. She asked him again, I've committed adultery. Only when she asked the third time for a punishment was the punishment insisted on. That is the only
Should he not have still said no?
I beg your pardon?
Should he not have still said no?
No, she insisted.
But Douglas Murray, there are some disturbing young people being far more radical. Disturbing surveys about 7/7 and 9/11 come out, don't
Absolutely, and the younger they go in this country at the moment, the more likely they are to be radical. This is the problem, and the previous speaker was absolutely right about this, that the politicized version of Islam is the real problem at the moment. Most faiths take a long time to sort of work themselves out, to be interpreted, for people to drop verses that aren't any good. Christianity and Judaism, many centuries ago, got through this process of dropping the wicked and the violent verses. Islam has to do that now, and it has to do it fast.
But isn't that compromising your religion, editing it for the times in which you live? Isn't that
And if I can say so, I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. The great achievement of Western European civilization in the last few hundred years, the Enlightenment, the ability to not have rules based on people pointing to a verse in a holy book that you may not think is a holy book and saying you have to live your life by the law because of this verse. We've managed to get away from that, and as the gentleman in the front row here has shown, it's very important that Islam also gets away from that. If that happens, it can be a guide to your life, but not the legal nightmare which people like Mr. Choudary would have us live in.
Just a point of fact, Nicky, that in fact Muslims never had that problem throughout the whole of history. The Sharia wasn't implemented on a state level. It's the modern politicized Islamist movement that people like Choudary represent that is now calling for the politicization of Islam. And I'd just like to remind Douglas as well, the author of Neoconservatism, Why We Need It, that it was Bush who said, you're with us or against us, and not God. And that's an important point, because
Mr. Bush did not say so on behalf of God.
And you're a former radical yourself.
Because he launched it in the name of God. So
and you are a former radical yourself, but
I've never been to prison for it.
Yes.
My last question. Douglas Murray, what's gone wrong with the welfare state, if that's the case? Are there scroungers?
Well, there are scroungers, certainly. I mean, it's not just the papers that are full of them, as the lady there says. Lots of people have seen these people in their own lives. I mean, nobody disagrees, I think, about the importance of there being a welfare system which is there to support people. It was set up to do this, and it's a terrific thing we have in this country, but it was set up to be a safety net, that if you fell, if you became unemployed, if your life went badly wrong, it was something to catch you. That's a very, very important thing in our society. But something has happened in the last 60 years, and it's turned from being a safety net into a kind of safety blanket. in which some people spend their whole lives supported by the state, never have to work, their parents maybe never worked, and it's not that they don't want to work, it's just that the welfare, the blanket system, encourages them to think that they don't have to go out there, and they shouldn't be looking quite hard, and it comforts them, cosets them. We're creating a society which is not just physically, but morally obese.
So that's the system. Douglas Murray, how do you sort things like that? Guys like Scott, who'd love to work, but can't because they can't afford to.
Sure, no, that's madness. But I mean, that nobody, I think, would think that that was a good situation. But the whole issue of the work ethic thing is something we should address in this country, and we will have to address it in the coming years during the recession. That's like one thing. You mentioned the Shannon Matthews family case. It's a great shock to a great many people in this country to discover that this underclass existed. But we have to also recognise the fact that to a very great extent that underclass was created because the working class was imported into this country. You then got the idea that there were jobs that people who lived in Britain could not do, they were beneath them, and there are other countries in Europe that have the same problem. We've got to get around this idea. If we want our streets cleaned, we're going to have to go and clean the streets. Somebody has to do the job.
What would you like